is Suzanne. I'm co-founder and head of carer support here at Mobilise. I'm also caring for my husband, Matt, who has young onset Parkinson's. So admin's our topic today. Now, this can take up a lot of carers' time. It's often not recognised as a caring job, but it's quite a significant part of it. We're just kind of expected to fit it in and get it done. I don't recall ever a professional ever asking me if I was coping with the carer admin. So it's a bit of unseen, but a significant role. Carer admin can be tied to uncomfortable emotions such as grief, guilt, resentment, anger, and overwhelm. So the hope is that by joining the event today, that we'll be able to feel a bit better about this side of caring, a bit less stressed, more hopeful and understood. Rather than sending you off with grand plans to completely master the admin, we'll have some small achievable steps that will make the difference where it matters. We'll share practical tips, mindset approaches that will be helpful, and recognise what a great job we're already doing. And the good news, you're not going to just hear from me. I've got my guests here on screen with me as well. So a whole range of things come under the heading of admin, like benefits, meal planning, shopping, property management, your admin and the admin of the person you care for, generally running the home without the help of a partner, maybe that's you, or maybe you're running 2 homes, bills, appointments, medication management, sorting all that out, prescriptions and all, just getting it organised, managing life around routine, the kind of logistics of making things happen, chasing things up. There's the kind of business as usual admin versus the kind of big decision admin and those big forms that we have to fill in and legal stuff. So lots going on. But let's check in with our guests. What are the types of admin that you regularly have to tackle? Any practical tips? Claire, can I start with you?
Just as you went through there, I agree that the list is endless. It just comes in all the time. And you forget that you're doing it for 2 people. Some people are caring for more than 2 people, but it's enough to keep on top of my own. Plus all the extra things that you do. So lots of application forms and medical things and financial things for both of us. I try to do things with him whenever possible, even if it's just telling him what I'm doing, because it feels a bit less lonely. The other thing I do is I have one little corner of the house where it's admin, and have it nowhere else, and I have days off when I don't do admin. Just get it out of my hair, because otherwise it would get more overwhelming. And I consider myself a very organised person. I used to be a teacher, and it's never possible to be on top of it all. I think of it like laundry. There's always more. Just when you think you've done something good and ticked it off your list, more comes in the post, or more things need doing, or more things you remember that you haven't done, etc. It just goes on forever.
But that's okay. You can be an organised person and still have admin that needs doing. Really great stuff, Claire. Thank you for sharing that. John, what about you? What kind of admin are you up to, and what do you find helps?
So I'm very comfortable with the internet and apps. I do all the banking online. I can't remember the last time I went to a shop, so I do my Tesco's and Amazon shop every week. And prescriptions, do those on the app. And also I've been doing medical appointments by phone, and he's been very good in changing medication, doing that sort of stuff on the phone. It's worked out very well.
It's great to find it when it works for you. Sometimes it can all be a bit overwhelming, but when it works and you've got the online sorted, it's brilliant. But you also have your calendar. That's not online, is it?
So I have a calendar, one I prepared earlier, which is it's a total scroll, so you probably can't read any of it. But it's got some rather posh symbols on it that my daughter-in-law made for me. Shows me which bin I've got to empty, whether it's recycling or not. A set of coloured stickers is really easy. If you have, blue for the blue recycling bin and black for the hairdresser to come in or whatever it is, it's fairly easy.
Yeah, that's good. Just helps with the reminders as well. Brilliant stuff. Jane, what about you?
Oh, my admin's perfect. Yeah, right.
She's hidden her admin tray.
Yeah. Okay, I did say I wasn't going to show it, but okay, look, I just kind of do that kind of to say, it's hard. It's really hard. And I think you were right, Suzanne, when you said it's a really unrecognised part of caring, that people don't recognise just how much time it can take. You really have to steel yourself sometimes to do it. I'm afraid I haven't got any magic bullets, but the kind of things that I do to try and support myself in doing it, making sure that there's no interruptions, because once you've finally got your head around doing it, there's nothing worse than then having interruptions and end up half finishing it. I always have a coffee or something before I start, because I think a bit of a caffeine boost, a coffee or a chocolate or something, just helps get your brain in gear. But just as important, have a little treat waiting for me when I've actually finished, having a list. And I think that's really nice as well, like ticking stuff off the list. I think for the big hitters, you know, when you've got the big stuff, like you've got to do an application for attendance allowance or CHC application, that's a nightmare. I think the real big thing about that one is when I first started doing things like that, you kind of feel the need to do it yourself, but actually there's huge amounts of support out there. I mean, there's some like really good tips on the Mobilise website about filling in all those sorts of things. So I think just be kind to yourself and know when actually it might be helpful to get somebody to help you with it, and you know, the problem shared is a problem halved type thing.
And that sometimes we don't think about just getting a bit of help with it, that we just feel it's all on our shoulders. It must be us that has to do it. Is it just me, but it seems really complicated? Does everyone else find it easy? No, other people find it complicated.
Yeah, there is a lot of help out there.
The other thing going on is this emotional thing. Now, this isn't the same for everybody, but just that sense of noticing it. And we came across an academic name for what might be going on in the background, and it's called sludge theory. So do you feel like admin is a bit of sludge because it's caught up in not just the practical side of doing it, but maybe you are feeling resentment or guilt. We're resenting having to do it, or guilty that we're not doing it as well as we should. Perhaps we're feeling overwhelmed. The admin might be part of the battle to get what we want and the person we care for get what they need. So there might be anger involved in that. It becomes an unpleasant task as well. It reminds us of the illness, the condition, the situation that we're all in, which is not always a pleasant thing to focus on. Sometimes we kind of focus on the good stuff, that doesn't bother us, but admin brings it all back up again. And it can just be complex. We might be feeling that we're incompetent or not clever enough. And believe me, it's not you, it's the thing that's complex. It's not us that's the problem. And there might also be different behaviour that's going on that makes it harder. So procrastination, perfectionism, trying to make it look all beautiful and perfect. Head in the sand, just ignoring it and hoping it will go away. Lack of focus or over focus on one particular thing so that we ignore the other things. Or time wasting, just doing the sort of stuff that doesn't actually make a difference, beating ourselves up that we haven't done a good job, and not asking for help. So there might be emotions going on, there might be behaviours going on. But I think to open up that thought a little bit, those of you at home, just noticing the emotions you have around admin and the behaviours that you have. Are you procrastinating? Are you head in the sand? Are you not asking for help? They may be linked, but just notice them as we go through. But also, we're not all going to have emotions around these things. Let me come to you first, John. When I talk about emotions and admin, is that you or is it different for you?
It's not bad for me. I've never been worried about it. I use Alexa to remind me of many things. And on a Friday, I get a reminder to do my Tesco order. And that almost puts a bit of structure into your life. And then especially with, say, the food shopping, I would sit down with Lynn and go through it and make sure I hadn't forgotten anything.
It sounds almost kind of quite satisfying, actually, that there's a structure, there's a routine to it. You've mastered, you've got a few simple things that have made it much easier. That's a nice way to approach it. Thank you, John. Jane, what about you?
Yeah, I think you're right. In terms of emotion, I mean, certainly when thinking about my mum with her Alzheimer's, there's a whole bunch of emotions around. You know, she was a professional woman, very able in her own right, and suddenly she couldn't even do the most basic things. So you feel sad, you feel a huge responsibility for the fact that you're managing somebody else's life for them. When you start doing medical type things like PIP assessments and things like that, you feel like an invasion of privacy. You feel angry that, you know, you have to sort of start justifying when you've got so much evidence and you're still being cross-questioned, that kind of stuff. So yeah, I think certainly all the emotions that hang around the admin make it so much harder. And I think that's where trying to sort of be kind to yourself and maybe just taking it step by step and getting some support kind of makes it a wee bit easier.
Good to notice what might be going on for the person you care for as well. Actually, it kind of made an imbalance in the relationship in some ways.
It's also knowing when to take that control, isn't it? It's quite difficult. I mean, with my mum, I kept thinking, I should keep her involved because that seemed like the right thing to do. But actually, I realised that it was better to take it from her because she actually wasn't worried about it at all. And she was quite happy for the bills not paid with the Alzheimer's. It just wasn't a problem for her. And she wasn't worried about it. It was me that was worried about it. So it was actually better that I just did it. I was making more of an issue of it by trying to involve her, really.
Yeah, so some of those emotions we can get over a bit as well.
Mm.
We can notice them and actually go, actually, do I need to feel like that? Really helpful. Thank you, Jane. What about you, Claire?
One of the things that I find difficult is that when you fill in those big forms, you know, for people applications, and you have to go into everything that's bad, I sort of have to prepare myself. It's going to be depressing. It's not a nice thing to go over all the difficulties in order to apply for anything.
Yeah.
So it's nice to sometimes be aware of when you can put things off. I've noticed recently, I think, okay, maybe we don't have to do it yet. One of the things that I do is at the end of the day, before I go to bed and when my partner's in bed, I make a list of all the things I haven't done, especially the admin things, so that I don't worry that I'll forget or that they won't get done. It's like, well, that's a list for another day.
Sometimes just writing stuff down means it doesn't have to stay in your head. You don't have to try and remember it. So writing it down allows you to put it to one side. Thank you. Love it. I'm seeing lots in the chat about whiteboards. They're obviously the latest thing that we all need a mini whiteboard. That's what's caught my eye. But yes, some of us have skills from work which we can use. Even then, we think, well, I ought to be good at this. I do this for a job. It can still be really hard when we're trying to do it around caring. So just over to you guys to have a little think in the audience there. What is it, the emotions or the behaviour that you're noticing about you? So what's your state? What are your emotions about admin? What's your behaviour about admin? You're just building up those 4 things on your piece of paper. Ready for the last bit. Because we've all got different things causing us admin issues, we're going to need different solutions. So having a think about those things, we'll come to like what's our next step, what we're going to do with all that. But let's first of all see if we can dive into the Q&A. So there's a general question for Mobilise there. Have we got access to disability law service? No, we don't have specific services that we can refer on to. Your local care support organisation may have a local recommendation they can give. But there is a great Facebook group we recommend, which is called Safeguarding Futures Social Care Planning, I think it's called. They do all sorts of things to do with the legal side of caring, the financial side of caring as well. They've got great advice. They charge for their advice, but there's lots of free advice on their Facebook group for the basics.
I was just going to say that some of the national organizations, so if you're looking after someone who has MS, Parkinson's, dementia or something, some of those organizations also have legal advice.
Yes, good point. Actually, those condition specific organisations, that's where we went to get help with doing attendance allowance for my mother-in-law. Actually, they had real specific pointers that linked up with that particular condition.
Don't forget your local Citizens Advice Bureau as well, a massive resource. Yeah.
But just say on procrastination.
Oh
for the
yes,
really
John.
difficult decisions, I involved my son. So trying to decide whether we were going to buy a new riser recliner chair, we were going to buy a car with wheelchair access, and having made the decision, it was fairly straightforward. But it was making the decision because I didn't want a new riser recliner chair, and I didn't want to give up my nice convertible.
Those tough decisions, you're so right, they can feel like procrastination because you can't move forward, you just get stuck in the research phase. But partnering up with someone to say, right, I've got this difficult thing to do, I need to talk it through with you, and then at the end of that, help me make a decision, and then you give yourself that deadline for making a decision. Sometimes you need to acknowledge what's difficult about that, what you're having to give up. You know, sometimes it's not the decision, the 2 choices and neither one we want. You know, we'd rather not have this problem in the first place. Good spot, John. Thank you. Do you find there is a certain time of day that works for you with fitting in the admin?
I find it easy just to actually put it in my diary that I'm going to do it at a particular time, because otherwise there's always a reason why it's not the right time. It doesn't have to be morning or afternoon, but by specifically making time in my diary that I'm going to do a couple of hours admin.
If it's something that I have to do and I can't do it with my partner, the best times for me is when he's asleep. I can just get on with it.
Yeah.
So I tend to do quite a lot of things after he's gone to bed.
That's a good point. John, what was your best admin time of day?
Anytime, but I used to do some things regularly. So every weekend I would check the medication and update the prescription request if we needed it.
Yeah.
On the financial side, I think just about everything went out on standing orders or direct debits. So just looked after themselves.
Any tips for dealing with admin procrastination? Once I get started, it's okay. It's the sitting down to do it that's hard. Now, Jane, you had a good tip there already about putting it in your diary. Any other tips?
Well, I think it's interesting that somebody else said in the chat about emotions, whether or not your headspace is in the right place. One of the things that I found really useful, not just for doing admin, but just generally for my well-being, is I've bought one of those plug-in air diffuser things that are either uplifting like lemony and things that are relaxing like lavender. Whatever scent works for you. I actually find that quite useful in terms of getting my head in the right place.
I was just thinking that although I have all my admin in one little corner of the house, if I just had admin there, I don't think I'd ever go there, and I'd never do the admin. So I have to have things in that area that aren't admin to sort of soften it a bit, so that I can go and do something nice either before or after. The thing I do that helps me, I bunch jobs together. So that I've done all the phone calls or all the emails. I try to bunch things together that are easy to do together. So the things that need printing that makes me think I've done something.
I've heard people get out their mindfulness colouring books and sit with a cup of tea and the list of people they need to phone and just work their way through. John, what about you? Is procrastination something for you?
I try to automate everything. So, the particular magazines you like to do all the puzzles in, set it up a standing order. It comes every month. So, as I say, other than the big issues, when I needed help to decide what to do.
Thank you. And one more question, and I find it very difficult as I have several chronic health conditions that cause exhaustion, fatigue and pain. How does everyone else manage? I think that's so true, isn't it? There's their own stuff that we're also dealing with, and as carers, we're more susceptible to these kinds of things. So managing energy levels can really get in the way of trying to do anything constructive. And then that creates that cycle of feeling frustrated. Claire, you're nodding away there. Does that chime with you?
Yeah, because I think it makes it worse if I'm realistic. There are some weeks when I just can't do it. I just have to say, well, it's not going to happen this week. I just have to catch up some other time. I try not to beat myself up about when I can't do things. I don't have the energy or the mindset. The other thing that can make me feel better about that is I have friends who share things that we're getting fed up about. It just helps to tell somebody.
If we just sit with it, then it weighs us even heavier, doesn't it? Sometimes it's okay to have a bit of help. Actually to say, look, this is difficult. I can't do this on my own. Could that be something that someone else could help with? So sometimes it is just recognizing we need a bit of help and we can't do it all, or we don't need to do it all. Sometimes noticing I'm attempting to do this, I'm getting nowhere. Do I need to fight procrastination, or do I need to stop and rest to have the energy to be able to do this as well, rather than just keeping on trying when we're feeling super tired? So thank you. Well, my lovely guest, so much wisdom from you today. One final little nugget of wisdom you'd like to share?
Well, I think you were right in what you were just saying. Sometimes when you have a stab at it and for whatever reason it's not happening, I've gone away, had a cup of tea and allowed myself to have a think about it, that actually when I come back to it, I can come back with a fresh mind and approach it having worked out a strategy. And if your health isn't up to it that day, well, do you know what, just give yourself a break. Be kind to yourself. I think that should definitely be a take-home message from this.
That's lovely. Thank you, Jane. John, what about you? What's your final words?
I guess I use Alexa a lot for lists, add shopping lists, reminders.
I think it's quite good to master something like that, actually, and work out just what it can do. And when you know what someone else is using it for, that's when you go, oh, I haven't tried that. Let me give that a go. Thank you. And Claire, any final words from you?
It depends what part of the country you're in as to what organisation is most helpful. In some parts of the country where my parents were, Age UK were great at helping fill in forms. And there are organisations that would be helping to make sure they get attendance allowance or whatever it is.
Fantastic. Thank you, everybody. Thank you to my lovely guests. For those of you in the audience, that final thought really about what happens next. Thinking back to your piece of paper that you had. So you talked about what state your admin was in. We talked about what emotions or behaviour was impacting on admin. And the final thing is to think about the next small step, the kind of one thing, rather than, right, I'm going to go and blitz all of my admin and do all of my filing and create this spreadsheet and be the perfect administrator. Please don't do that. If you're nearly there, then please carry on. But that's not needed. It's just the next step, the one that's going to make the most difference. Maybe it's about going to get some help and seeing who can help you with this. Maybe it's about lowering your expectations on yourself and accepting that good enough is good enough. Or maybe it's making one small change, whether it's that to-do list to keep you focused, little calendar tips that John had, or trying out a bit of technology just for the fun of it rather than because you have to get in with the tech. So that's the final thing I want you to make a little note of. What's your next step? Thank you very much, everyone that's joined us. Look forward to seeing you on our next thing soon. Take care now. Bye-bye.